like to call this meeting of the Vallecitos Water District to order. First business would be if we get Grace or Dina to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Grace. Also our staff photographer. Hoorah. Hoorah. Okay, roll call please, Diane.
Yes.
Here. Here.
Here.
Present. We have the introduction from our famous PR department.
Adopt the agenda. We need to adopt the agenda.
Isn't that first? Oh, I'm sorry, yes, important one. We need to, it's my last meeting, so I can fluff it.
We almost had you trained.
Yeah, we need to adopt the agenda for the regular meeting of November 19th. However, I do believe the general manager has a change for the agenda.
Yes, President Martin, if you could, I'd like you to add a closed session item to the agenda in accordance with Government Code Section 54954.2, Section B2. This matter concerns a claim filed by Mr. and Mrs. Roberts and Prestige Pool, and we do need to take action on a claim this evening in closed session. We would need a motion and a second and a vote to add this to the agenda, please.
Move to approve the addition.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Let the minutes show.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim. Okay, now the introduction of new employee.
Where is our new employee?
First question always is, what district did you steal him from?
I don't know.
Wasn't that one?
Oh, really? All right.
Huh?
Well, it's my pleasure this afternoon to introduce Rick Crawford. He started at the district on October 27th in the position of Systems Construction Worker 1, which was vacant due to an employee transfer. Rick joins us, here's your answer, from Don Peterson Contracting, where he worked for the past year. Rick is married to Nikki, and they have 3 children, Kobe, Jack, and Kaylin. In his free time, he enjoys coaching, baseball, and fishing.
Nice.
Welcome. All right, Rick, welcome. Nice to have you aboard.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have a presentation from Mark Smith.
Yeah, Mark, if you come on up. Mark joined the district in January of 2009 as a construction worker 1. In 2011, he was promoted to level 2 of construction, and he transferred to Meadowlark to become an operator in July of 2013. Mark has since earned his grade 1 wastewater treatment plant operator certificate issued by the State Water Resources Control Board as of October 23rd, 2014. When they first go to the plant, they go in there as an operator in training. They have to have a certain amount of time, then they get their 1. So he's now achieved the grade 1. That's it.
Mark, thank you very much on behalf of the board. Of course, all of our ratepayers. And we should have one more time to look that way and smile.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Al. And the exodus begins.
Nice talking to you.
Yeah, nice seeing you.
Come when you
Yeah.
can stay longer, I mean, really.
Stay for my report.
I can guarantee you the only way to do it is have food.
Yeah.
And you, I don't know if you remember, but when we had the meeting down there, when we first had lunch, we used to have them at noon. So we brought sandwich materials in, we had it at the back of the room. One of the groups was doing a presentation that day when they were introducing whatever they did, so they all got there right at noon, or a little before. They walked in, well, all they saw was food. So it was like a horde of locusts went past that table, and when they got done, there was nothing left. And the first person to walk into the room to have lunch, of all people, was Betty Ferguson. But I mean, they went through there, and there wasn't even a crumb. And they were all sitting there eating, and I walked in, I'm like, oh boy. Oh boy. It was pretty funny.
Okay, oral communications, We have none at this time, we have one coming up, correct? Okay, consent calendar. Do one motion for all, approval of minutes, warrant list, financial reports.
Move to approve?
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous.
Thank you.
Yes,
President. If I have just a question and comment on that, should I done it earlier? And is this
but you can do it right now, we're gonna reopen it, so you can ask your question.
Oh, okay.
Sure, sure.
This is on the warrant list, and I was just curious, on the emergency vehicle, portable emergency vehicle, maybe it's a generator that we spent a fair amount of money on. I'm just wondering if you could tell me how often we do that and how many of those we have in stock, if this is something that, I mean, I'm sure we budget for it, but does it happen often, or?
Yeah, and Ed might want to come up and address this as well.
Yeah, we did budget for this one. It is a generator.
Okay.
And Ed can let us know how many of them we have in the fleet. And
I thought you were the number man.
I know it's a good number.
Only money.
Ed's the bailout.
Actually,
When they don't know the answer, they go, Ed.
we have two portable generators of this size. They are to run our pump stations during emergency. Some of our pump stations have generators built in on that site, and some of the older ones that we bought portables. The two portables that we currently have, and this is replacing one of them, unfortunately, there's really nothing wrong with them, but the APCD, Air Pollution Control District rules and regulations for the state of California changed. So these motors will no longer be able to be used after, I think it's 2016 or 2017. So we have to replace them, so we're doing one a year instead of.
so we're gonna send them to Mexico.
That unfortunately, yeah, we're not gonna get a lot of money from them. They have to be sold into Mexico or out of state.
So someone else uses them to buy.
Someone else will
not
buy,
us.
will purchase them
And then we will be purchasing another one next year?
next year, yes.
Thank you. I was gonna say, this was an interesting warrant list. We had a lot of big purchases this time on it, so it was very interesting to read it. That one I didn't know what it was. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No reason to reclose or revote, is there?
No.
Next action item, 2.1, and we do have a speaker on it. Would you have the speaker before the report or after the report so you can address the speaker's concerns?
That would be the chair's.
Let's have the speaker and then you can add that as your answer.
Mike Hunsaker, I serve as the Taxpayer Association representative for Tehisa and Unified School District and the San Marcos Unified School District. As such, I've been quite getting proficient in bonds and some aspects of financing, but I am no means a financial expert. There's some concerns I have about the report that I'd like to have answered. I've only had a chance to glance through it, and I apologize for that. But it looked like the new facilities funds were in deficit, and I'd like to understand if my impression is correct and how we got into such a deficit. I also like to note that because of the meltdowns economically in Japan and Europe, there is a vast flood of money coming into the U.S., which is driving up stock values and driving up the cost of bonds, thereby decreasing their yield. I commend the district for utilizing direct bank loans, which are far cheaper alternative for ratepayers. All too often, there is an effort to go past cash flow problems to the detriment of ratepayers, and I'd like to make sure that doesn't happen. I've also seen some problems in some cities that'll go unnamed on refinancing of bonds. Particularly, there is some concern that it's coming up with capital appreciation bonds, where bonds that mature over time are bought ahead of time with some rather large increases in net yield to investors at taxpayer, ratepayer detriment. They usually try to hide the added cost by just talking about net present value. I'm hoping in the future that if you do refinance any bonds, that the cash flow and the other alternatives be considered. The municipal bond market appears to be too restricted to get a true market value. With all this flood of money, we shouldn't be paying much more than 4% for bonds or loans at this point in time. Yet 5 and 6% is the norm, and we can do better. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, the report.
What we could do, if the chair wouldn't mind, it's hard to explain that through the audit. What I'd have Tom do is refer you back to page 23 of the agenda. That's the actual part of the sewer and revenue expense report, and it shows our funds, why there's deficits. And I'll just have Tom explain that to you briefly.
Yeah, and if I may, just to address the comment before we get into the audit, that is a correct observation. There's a deficit in the capital facility funds, which basically is reflective of cost of construction going up, and that's our restricted funds from developer fees, and just not enough developer fees coming in now as we're in that, still in that, coming out of the recession. Hopefully that'll pick up, but ideally it's always zero, but it can never always be zero. Sometimes it'll be negative, sometimes it'll be positive if we have connection fees collected ahead of construction. But in this case, we financed a lot of construction on Twin Oaks. Both reservoirs are still outstanding debt, so there's still a lot of outstanding debt to be paid from developer fees when they come in. So, and unfortunately, can't tell the future. So hopefully that'll turn around.
So, it does show as a negative, but obviously as a public agency, we can't be running in a negative, so it's how we track, and we paid up front, and then we pay ourselves back as the fees come in.
Right. That's why we track it. It's almost like a due to from. We just show it as a negative to know that, hey, this, it needs to be replenished. Okay, and we have with us today, first of all, starting on page 30 of your board packet is where the report on the audit starts. And we have with us today Harvey Schroeder and David Foreman from White Nelson DL11. They were the partners involved in the audit. I'm going to have, I guess it's David start. He's going to be addressing a letter that was handed out to you on your desk, as well as the opinion letter. That's the very first part of the audit in your packet. And then we'll follow along in order that it's presented in the board packet. And then John Fusco, our finance manager, will address the management discussion and analysis section, and then hand it back over to David for the financial statements and the notes and any remainder. They'll be going over highlights, but as you have questions, going through, please ask, and we'll try to address the questions as well as we go through. So, David, would you like to come up and start us off?
Sure. Thank you, Tom. Board. So this is our 5th year doing this audit that we had a 3-year contract followed by a two-year extension.
This is the last year of the contract?
So this is the last year of our contract. Seems time flew very fast. It seems like we just started, but then it's already been 5 years.
Would you prefer I ask questions as you go along, or do you want me to wait till the end?
No, you can ask questions as you go.
The 5-year contract, can you tell me financially what it cost us the first year, second year, third year, fourth year, fifth year?
Well, all our fixed fees.
Or Tom, if you can tell me.
Pardon?
Yeah, I think it was off the top of my head, I don't know. It was like between 20 and 30,000 each year, each of those 5 years.
No variance?
No, it's fixed fee. So we know ahead of time going into the RFP. It's a not to exceed fee.
Yeah. Well, I think to answer your question, yes, there was an increase every year in the fee, but then I don't know quite what that increase was.
No,
but then it was a fixed year. So when we initially bid on the audit back 5 or so years ago, that we gave you the fees through the 3-year period plus the two-year extension period. So then the fee was known throughout the whole period of time.
And just out of curiosity,
Sure.
don't you incur more expenses the first year because you need to do, it's brand new to you? And the second, third, fourth, and fifth, I don't want to say it's old hat, but you know the routine.
Yeah, which is why certainly we do hope to retain the audit for 3 to 5 years, because there are costs that we're able to recoup through those latter years. But then whether the fee for year 1 through 5 is really an indicative fee of the different costs, I'd have to look at that further.
That's why, Director Martin, that's why you never see a contract for 1 year. Audit firms always go out for at least 3 because they know they're going to eat it on year 1.
Then they
And then
recover it.
hopefully by year 3, they're actually making some on it.
And by year 5, they've more than made it up and they owe you a refund.
Oh, yeah, then they should be taking us out to
I don't
lunch
think I
and
would say
everything.
that.
Depends on staff, too. Good thought.
Okay, so then are there any other questions before I get started?
Just real quick along the same lines. So this is your last year. Is there something that, you're gonna go out to bid, I assume?
Correct.
For the next 3 to 5 year contract?
Yep.
Are they precluded by any
No, no,
means
no.
to rebid? It's
Yep.
just strictly a competitive
Correct.
process?
Correct. Yeah.
There's nothing that requires us by law to use a different auditing form?
No.
Okay.
It's discretion of the board on auditing. We had the contract before, and then the board direction when we brought it before them 5 years ago was to go ahead and open it up, and instead of extending a prior contract, it was to go ahead and look for a new one. So we went through a competitive process, we interviewed, then we brought back a recommendation to the board.
And are they-
I'm
sorry.
I will mention, though, that both SDLA conferences I've been to, they recommend that you change every contract. But that's their recommendation.
I think kind of historically, we have done that just because of that. It's just prudent to consider a new set of eyes.
That's what my next question was. Is this the end of your first 5 years with us? Or
Correct.
have you ever done business with the district before?
Okay, sorry. Yes, we have. We were the auditors, I want to say 7 or so years prior to that. So then we had a 5-year stint as auditors. I don't know the exact years, but there was about a 5 or 7 year period in which we were not the auditors, and then we were reattained again.
Okay.
And how many companies like yours are there in the San Diego area that do this?
I don't know, Harvey, do you have like 4 or 5?
Hi, Harvey Schroeder, partner with White Nielsen, D11s. There's probably in San Diego County, I'd say there's 3 to 5 firms that do this kind of work. It's a very special niche area. Our firm's been around since the 20s, and we've been doing this work for governmental agencies since the 40s. So we do it all up and down the state. So you really do need a niche to be in this niche, so you don't jump in and out. The other thing on the contract, we don't charge a large amount in the first year. As David was saying, our lowest fee was probably in the first year. And I would say the increase is probably somewhere between $500 and $1,500 a year. Yeah, nominal amount. Right.
Paper costs?
Yes, yeah, cost of living, just typical.
Right. Thank you. And one question to staff, when we do go out, and we have gone out in the past with a request, how many do we typically get back? Do we get 3 or 5 back?
Yeah, we typically do. We did it early enough this year. A lot of times if we're late, it's narrow, but as long as you do it early enough before these firms, the 5 firms or so that we talk about, before they schedule out their audits, then we'll probably get all bids from all 5.
I recall the last time we had 3.
You said we did it early enough this year?
Yeah, we're in the process. We didn't do it yet, but we're in the process of getting a list and seeing who we're going to send an RFP to. We usually shortlist it because, like Mr. Schroeder said, there's not that many qualified to do this, so it's an easy shortlist. And usually we look to firms and the neighboring agencies and say, who do you use? Put them on a list. Or sometimes we have an auditor send us a letter and say, can we get on your RFP list? And if they're qualified, we'll send them one.
Okay. So are there any other questions before I get started? Okay. I just wanted to review a few things, that there are some items that we are required to communicate to you, so I wanted to talk about some of those, and then like Tom mentioned earlier in terms of the order of things, then I will talk about our opinion, and then I'll let John talk about the other section. So you guys, so then the district hired us to be a independent third party, and then what our job really boils down to is that we render an opinion as to whether we think the statements and the notes, as they're presented in your packet, whether they fairly represent the position of the district. So of that whole packet, really our product is just a few pages. But for us to render that opinion, we take that very seriously. So there's a lot of testing that we do, that we test balances. We test in a variety of ways. We'll actually pull an invoice and look and make sure it gets coded right, that we will confirm with third parties. We do that mainly with your cash and your debt balances to make sure that the third-party banks and your debt holders that they agree with the balances shown in these statements. But then the actual responsibility for for keeping your records under what's called generally accepted accounting principles, which is GAAP, that actually lies with your staff. Our job is to audit under a standard that's called generally accepted auditing standards. So it's our job under GAS to make sure that your staff is maintaining records under a GAAP. Because we come and do an audit, that doesn't mean that they don't have to, that it isn't their job still to maintain records under a GAAP. So that when we render an opinion, that we render something that we call a reasonable assurance that everything is fairly stated. We don't look at every single transaction. We do test, like I said, we vouch and confirm that we use our auditor judgment based on our knowledge of the district, based on looking at the condition of the records, that we use our judgment as to what areas that we think we should focus on. But then that being said, I think that we do a very thorough audit, that we do look at all areas from your assets to your liabilities to your income and expenses. One of the things that we do test is we test your internal control processes, but then we don't render an opinion. So then we do look at the process over your billing system, over your cash receiving system, your cash disbursement system, but then nowhere will you find an opinion saying that our opinion that we feel that your internal control is functioning well or poorly. That's just not a part of the audit. But that being said, that if we did have findings that we felt should be brought to the board because they were issues that we were concerned enough that we felt that the board really should need to know those issues, then we would bring those to the board's attention. This year we did not have any of those types of issues. You were just handed a letter.
Got a question for you, son.
Yes.
He has his hand up first.
Director Hernandez.
Yes.
You indicated that you do a third-party testing with our cash, that what is stated, in fact, is what's in the bank.
Correct.
Do you also do that on particular invoices? You see the invoice, 1,000 feet of pipe laid for $10, $10,000. Do you take do you ever do a third-party review of that particular invoice, either through the staff or through the contractor, going, well, this is what's said? Is that what was done?
I would say that we haven't done that here. I mean, I do look at a lot of invoices, and then we do compare what the vendor sent you as an invoice as to what's in your books and records. But then we haven't felt a need to, as part of our audit, to maybe call out to that vendor and say, did you really invoice this amount? Is this a accurate amount that we feel comfortable with looking at the invoices that's what they billed you?
And I only bring this up because recently we've had one of our other agencies in the news relative to this very issue, and I'll bring that up later, but I wanted to ask you if that was done in our audit through our organization.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So did I answer the
Yes,
question?
you did.
Okay.
Yep, I got it.
Okay.
And then, Mr. President?
Yes.
And so on the same, again, along the same lines, do you, as part of your audit, do you take an invoice that you're reviewing and compare it to what was part of a quote to ensure that it matches up what was initially proposed? Or are you just looking at the invoice amount and to how it lines up with our current, budget records?
During our internal control testing, we do start with a purchase order, and then we'll go to the invoice. So then we will try to trace those systems through that. We'll see if the project that like we actually do some project at what's the word I'm looking for, bid, that we look at bid testing to make sure that the vendor that you chose, that they were the lowest responsible bidder, and then we'll trace from the bid to the purchase orders to the invoices.
So you're not necessarily checking at all for billing accuracy, necessarily? That if they told us that they were gonna bill us 10 feet of pipe at $1,000 a foot, that they didn't actually bill us $11,000? And that maybe we missed it on our staff side?
If I could, the purchase order, when it goes through, includes the original bid and quote as
Yeah.
part of the purchase order in our internal control. So when it comes through with the purchasing policy that the board established, when the PR is written, it includes the quote, it includes the backup material, including the bids. That comes through the process to where Tom reviews and approves it, that everything tracks and it follows the numbers, and then that comes to me for approval. So it does begin with the quote, the bid, all the way through payment.
Okay. And so do you take a sample of invoices? Is it
Yes.
just random? Are the invoices that you select, or are the invoices that staff provides you?
We sample. We sample in a few different ways. That we just that we do some random sampling, and then in that case we might look at a very low dollar amount item, and then we may look at a very high dollar amount item. But then we do also focus on the larger dollar amounts. For our internal control testing, that it's more random in nature, just because the general feeling is that $25 check really should have the same process that the $25,000 check has. And then also when we do random sampling, then that wouldn't allow your staff to only focus on making sure that certain ones are processed in a certain fashion, right? Because we'll be looking at any number of random transactions.
Okay. And then one last thing. You had mentioned just a second ago that you didn't find anything in this year's audit that you thought would warrant being brought to the board's attention. Over the course of your 5-year contract, has there ever been something that you found that you felt that you needed to bring it to the board?
I don't know off the top of my head that I know we have had comments that have been brought to the board.
I can look back and find it. I know last year we did not.
Last year
I
was
don't think
clean.
the year before we didn't, but maybe the year before we had a recommendation letter about some things to improve in our internal controls. I'll see if I can find that.
If I remember last year, there was like one widget at a place.
I think that is
Yeah, I
correct.
think we missed a
Because I brought it up.
widget, and Director Snella, when we did have that letter, I think it was 4 years ago, I think it was the second year of your current contract. There were some adjustments that needed to be made on capital funding and transfers of where the money went. And then they had a couple other things that they suggested we make process changes. So what we did as staff was we then put a memo together and we brought policy back before the board with that recommendation letter. It wasn't a management letter in the sense of issues, something wrong. It was suggestions to clarify process. We brought that back to the board with policy to modify to do what the auditor said. We've never actually had a management letter here in 40 years that I'm aware of that's been any issue. They've usually been suggestions to make the process better. But we will get that for you and bring it to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. I just wanted to just real briefly address the letter that you were just handed. So this is a part of the required communication that we make, and it's just to kind of get on the same page about some of the things that went on during the audit. So then the first thing in the qualitative aspects of the accounting practices, one thing that I wanted to note was that we didn't note any transactions entered into during the year for which there was a lack of authoritative guidance. And then we found that all the significant transactions were recognized in the statements in the proper period. One of the things on the bottom and then goes on to the top of the next page is that there are estimated numbers included in the statements, so that you think that all numbers are going to be that are going to be supported by invoices and cash inflows and outflows. But then there are some items on the statements that are just estimates. Now, I think they're valid estimates, so I'm not saying there's anything wrong. But there are a few that I listed there, and I'm just going to talk about the first two. One is that you're required to mark your investments up or down to their market value. So you buy a treasury note in March, and then in June it has a slightly different market value from what you purchased it from. So then we are you as a district, that you are required to show those as their market value as opposed to their cost. Normally there's not large variances there, but then that is an estimate made, since that's not the actual cost that you use. The other is the useful life of your capital assets, that you put a capital asset in place that it has a 40-year life. So then we take depreciation over a 40-year period. That's really, we have no way to know whether that asset really will last the full 40 years, whether whether its usefulness during that year was really 1/40 of the total. So that's an estimate made. Just briefly going down the bottom of the second page there, that we had no difficulties encountered during the audit. If you jump to the top of the next page, we are required to report to you whether we had any journal entries that we had to make that were actually found as a result of our audit, and then there were none during this year. We had no disagreements with management, that there were no consults with other accountants. We have seen instances not here at the district, but then where we felt that something wasn't recorded correctly. So then we brought that to staff's attention.
Quick question, the second line on that, it says those that are clearly trivial. What do you consider a clearly trivial matter?
It's hard to give a dollar amount, but then it's that if I were to give a dollar amount, it would be in the hundreds, maybe a few $1,000s. So if we found something that we thought should have been $152,000, but then it was $151,000, that we probably wouldn't feel that required being brought to the board's attention. But then we actually have a pretty low threshold for what we think is clearly trivial, because...
But would that be the same standard used, let's say, for the cash box, the money that comes into the business, the cash that comes in?
No. No, cash is an area that has an inherent risk to it. So it's not a risk to your. I'm not saying that there's a risk to the district different from other districts, but then just cash is something that has an inherent risk to it. So then we do. So we are a little less apt to call something trivial and pass on it, because cash can involve fraud. Right, that versus a reporting issue, calling something salaries versus benefits type of thing really isn't a fraud issue. But then, we are aware that something that's $1,000 or $2,000, but that could be a fraud issue, isn't something that's trivial. Yeah, so then we do focus on that. The second to last part, the consults with other accountants, I started to say that sometimes if we don't agree with how something's shown, that the staff may go and get a second opinion on it. That did not happen here, that we had no issues like that. We had no audit findings or issues really during this year. So if you jump to the last page, so this other matters section is going to be in the opinion letter too, which I'm going to talk about next. This just says that the report that you have in front of you contains a lot of different pieces to it. Some of the pieces we audit, some of the pieces we don't audit. So those sections there talk about the pieces we do and don't audit. Okay, so then are there any questions on this letter?
Just to clarify, you said, I might have misheard you. Did you say that you did not find any audit findings or issues during this audit?
Correct.
Nothing? It's a pretty dynamic, water district with a lot of money coming in and out. There was nothing that even
I would say
remotely was reportable?
no.
I mean, I just think, if I audited my own personal finances, I'm sure I'd find something, and I don't have nearly the budget that this place has.
You don't have the process.
You don't have the process in place that we do.
I can't speak to that.
Yeah, well.
Now, if I could, Director Snell, like I said, perhaps as many years as I've been here, for 31 years, we've had a clean audit literally for 31 years. There have been minor things that have come forward. We've never had a management letter from the standpoint of finding a failure or a problem. We've had suggestions, and actually the first time we got a letter from them when they brought them to me, I was perfectly happy to bring that to the board. There's nothing to hide, but the processes that the board has adopted from the purchasing policy and everything we put in place, it's pretty tight. Plus, the bigger thing is separation of duties on people who touch money, who can authorize, who can approve. Everything is, I hate the word firewalled, but everything is separated as strongly as we can.
Yeah, good.
Director Hernandez?
I went through this, as well as I could understand it. What I didn't see, and I looked for it, and I don't think I found it, was a letter of recommendation for change or processing. Did I miss that, or is it not in here?
No, we just didn't issue a letter during this year,
There
just
is-
like
there
Director
is none.
Lamb was, or
So there is-
Manager
there is none.
Lamb was saying.
Clean. It's a clean audit.
I commend us that.
It's a clean
because, I don't think in any other agency I've ever been in that has had an audit, there's not, back page going, change the decimal over 2 point, meaningless as it may be, there's always some justification, if you will. Thank you.
I thought, and if I, go ahead.
Just to add to that, I've been through a lot of these, and I would say that if you haven't gotten there by the 5th year, it's a reason for concern, because when you're doing your audit, and mainly it's about process, trying to figure out if they're doing the right things, chain of custody, when you talk about cash or anything else. But they work with staff throughout the 5 years, and if you haven't gotten to that point by the 5th year where there isn't any recommendations, then somebody isn't doing their work, So again, I think we're to be commended on that, but I don't think it's all that unusual at the 5th year.
And to those of you that may remember that last year, I'll just bring it up now, because I bring it up soon. Director Evans and myself had just come back from the Special District Leadership Academy up in Napa. And upon getting back, I had this on our agenda, and I'm like, this is the most important thing that a board does, is watching out for the ratepayers' dollars and cents.
Sure.
And I didn't feel I was given enough time to really look at it and gather it together before it came to the board. And I've talked to Dennis about it already, but it's huge responsibility. And I think at that time, you did have a letter saying to correct, there was a widget on one shelf instead of another. And I kind of scoffed at it, saying, well, you had to find something. Well, you beat it this year, you didn't find anything. So there's a widget.
Remove the
probably
shelf.
The widget must have went in the right place. But I was deeply concerned because last year I brought up, and maybe the members of the board remember this, the fact that there was no involvement from the board, and yet you're really working for us as our third party, and there was no interface, and I was assured by staff that there was interface, because at that time, President Hernandez had met with you and voiced any potential concerns. And in talking to Dennis about it prior this week, he admitted that maybe he got what I was trying to say incorrect. And
Yeah.
I hadn't brought it up since then. And the findings are already done, so it is what it is. But I'm thinking that next year, for next year, I would like to see us at least have a workshop on this prior to.
Yeah, and you are correct. I think I misinterpreted what it was, because it was the opinion of the board. They didn't want just one person being, it was to bring it back for the full board.
Right.
I took that to bring this back for the full board.
Right.
So I think what we'll do next time is when we go through the selection process and before we start the audit, which would be the introduction thing, which is historically what we've done is with the chairs, what we would do is have that as a agenda item, as an introduction to the full board in a board meeting. So that way it starts the process earlier.
Right.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
would
Yeah,
suggest
absolutely.
that for next time, because the bottom line, and I hate to bring this up again, but notice I'm not red-faced, I'm not upset like I was last year. I learned a lot. Is that the city of Bell had auditors, Bell, California, Roslyn, New York had auditors, and meanwhile, millions is being stolen from both. The auditors didn't show it because it wasn't your responsibility, that part of it. So I get it. You're just saying the general practices, so that's where we have a lot of faith. And if something does go wrong, and we hit the front page of the news, absolutely nobody says, who are your auditors? Who's your finance manager? They look at the board and go, you're the guy in charge of that. And we know that we have staff to do it. But I'm just saying, so us being a more important part of this audit, I think is very important.
Sure.
I have full faith in our staff, but I'm just bringing that up for hopefully next year.
Yeah, point taken.
Thank you. Okay.
I just jumped quickly to our opinion letter, which in your packet, that I believe starts on page 33. So really in classic auditor fashion, it takes us a couple of pages just to render a two-line opinion. But this is our opinion letter. It first talks about the responsibility of management, which I touched on earlier. That it's your job to be keeping your records and reporting under GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles. It's our job to audit under generally accepted auditing standards. And then it goes into a little bit there about that, just what an audit involves. The top of the second page, or page 34 in your packet, is our actual opinion letter. So is our opinion. So that is probably the most important thing that we offer. And then again, just to go on the record, that we did give a clean opinion. That we feel that the statements do fairly reflect the position of the district as well as its changes and cash flows that for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2014. That the rest of the letters down in the other matters section talks about that we do show the fiscal year 2013 numbers throughout the statements, and those were actually audited by us last year. And then there is some other acquired supplemental information that is a part of this packet too, and that's where I'm going to hand this off to John Fusco to talk about your management's discussion and a analysis. But I guess before I take my seat, are there any other questions?
Thank you.
Director Evans.
This is a little tongue-in-cheek when I ask this, but if I understand this correctly, your job is not to see how we're doing, if we're doing well or poorly financially as a district. Your job is to make sure that we've kept the money in the right columns, separated it, followed the correct procedures, we're consistent in that, and we reported everything. So if you were to do this and we were, the highlights where we were in financial dire straits, but we had done everything correctly in recording it, we would still be fine as far as meeting the principles, but you would come to us and say, we have a problem.
Correct, yeah.
Which we should know, I would think, but I'm just,
Yeah.
that's why I'm asking. I
We
mean,
would come to you aside from our opinion in a variety of situations. One, if we felt that there was a going concern issue, that if we felt the district didn't have enough assets to cover operations for the next year, we would come to you. If we felt that there was a internal control problem, which we felt could rise to the level that we felt that the statements could be misstated because of a lack of internal control, then we would bring that to your attention. If we had found fraud, of course, during the course of our audit, then we would bring that to your attention. But then, like I said, we didn't find any of those instances. But the answer to your questions, yes, that we're just not saying everything's clean. It's all up to you. If there were other issues that we found that we felt should be brought to the board's attention, then we would certainly do that. Okay. Are there any other questions?
How long did the audit, how long did it take you to complete this audit?
The process started in about June. Normally, we come out for internal control testing that takes 3 people around 3 or 4 days. And then we come out for what we call final field work, is when we come and actually test the final balances. And that is normally about three or 4 people for about a week. And then there's a lot of back and forth after that, emails and then other types of exchanges. And then to actually build the report, which is actually something that your staff builds it, but then like we of course read it and make sure that it accurately reflects our numbers. It's probably another 3 to 4 week process.
Okay, so the actual at the site, looking at documents, meeting with staffs, roughly
Probably about 2 weeks between the 2 different times.
Okay, thank you.
That's at the end of June, at year end.
Yes, that's when we started the audit. That was at the end of June. We came out to do our final field work where we actually test the final balances, I want to say in early to mid-September.
Okay.
John?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
President Martin, members of the board. I'd like to just walk you through the MD&A, which begins on page 35 of your packet. And as far as the financial health of the district, we're strong, and 2014 was a very good year. And of course, the good years are always based on strategic planning leading up to the good years and making prudent decisions and sometimes difficult choices and having good guidance too. I'll go over the highlights of the MD&A and then each of the sections just briefly for you, just to familiarize you with it a little bit. Most of these items on here, if not all these items, have been before the board at one time or another. They're just aggregated here at the end of the year as the results of our operations. The first bullet point on page 35 shows that our reserves increased. And basically, it's the result of increasing revenues and keeping our operating expenses at a minimum. As you remember, going through the budget process, we kept holding the line and looking at our expenses and keeping those to a minimum. Our capital facility fees decreased from 13 to 14. And as Tom had mentioned earlier, in our facilities funds, these fees are basically tied to development, and the fluctuations are not uncommon in these fees. Capital spending increased slightly between years, and a lot of that's attributable to the San Marcos Interceptor project, which winded down at the end of fiscal year 2014. Our cost of water continues to rise, and we anticipate that in each year's budget, and it rose again between 13 and 14. Our overall long-term liabilities or debt, we continue to pay that down, so that decreased between years. And the results of our operations fully covered our depreciation expense, which then allows us to build the reserves so that we can go on and pay for capital projects without borrowing. We also You also passed a budget in June, which is very conservative. Page 37 of your package describes the 3 financial statements. David will go through those in a little bit more detail. I'll just give you an overview of them. The first one is the statement of net position. Outside of government agencies, that's referred to as a balance sheet. For us, we had an increase in our net position, and what the increase is basically it's our assets, what we own, minus our liabilities, what we owe. The net result of that is net position. Our net position in fiscal year 2014 increased $6.4 million. The next statement after the statement of revenues and expenses, which also shows the increase of $6.4 million, is the statement of cash flows. And what that represents is where the cash came in and where the cash went. We had throughout all the cash coming in and all the cash going out, the net result of that for fiscal 2014 was $2.2 million increase. Page 38 has a comparison of fiscal years, because we always want to look at last year and this year to see where there are differences. And page 39 begins some detail regarding those differences. One of the big increases, like we mentioned before, is the statement of cash flows. It's the increase in the cash and investments and the positive results from operating. Page 39 has key financial indicators, and they show a strong financial position. That's where you go to look at those ratios and see how we're doing, and you look at them from year to year. One new one that we've added this year is the number of days of operating cash. And that's a mark that the rating agencies look at, and they say, okay, if our customers stop paying us today, how long can we continue to go with what we have, basically? And our target from our rating agencies, we were about 308 days. You could see in 2013 we were below that, and 2014 we're above. So we hit that target and then some on that. Page 40 graphically represents all the pieces of the pie of our revenues, what comprises all of our revenues, what comprises all of our expenses. The major ones for our revenues are still our core operations, our water sales and sewer wastewater service charges at 70% of our revenues. Our purchases of waters and wastewater treatment make up 53% of our expenses. When we compare fiscal year 2014 and 13, down below those two pie charts, we look at, over off to the right, the percentages, and then on page 41, we give some detail about those increases and decreases. The increases and decreases, for the most part, are similar to prior years. There's nothing really that jumps out. There's categories such as other revenues and other expenses. Those are outside of our operating, of providing water and wastewater services, and that's usually where you're going to see the fluctuations. So if our operating, our fluctuations are consistent with prior years and consistent with the industry, we're doing good. Other often contains things that happened one time. And when you're looking at 2 years and you had something one time that happened in this year, it makes the other year look strange. So that's why when you see in other revenues, there's a significant increase there, and that has to do large part with the market value of investments that David had mentioned earlier. We also had some one-time things happen in 2013 with the Encino Wastewater Authority, and that was the true-up that they did for the Phase 5. And that affected the 2013 statements, which then when you compare with 2014 statements, it makes that variance there. The next section below that is our restrictions, commitments, and limitations. That describes basically the debt that we have outstanding. What do we owe? What are our commitments? And we didn't issue any new debt in 2014. In fact, we paid down the debt that we do owe. We have a debt service coverage ratio of 3.11, and our covenant, our bond covenant, requires 1.25. So we're above that there.
Good question, Joe.
Yes, sir.
What does the 3.11 mean? To layman's terms.
In layman's terms, it's how many times did our revenues cover what we had to pay on our debt. How many times did we earn enough revenues to pay our debt? We did that 3 times.
And how does 3.11 true up with other agencies or other likes, or does that mean we're high, we're low? What does that mean to us?
Our bond covenant is 1.15. That's what we're obligated to meet. 3.1 is extremely high compared to others. Water Authority, for example, they have a target of 1.5. They dipped underneath that target a year ago, but they're back up over that target. They're less than 2, but even so, they're still AA+. They're still looked at very strong. So 3 is extremely strong.
So there's no offense to financial people, so the 3.11 should have had an exclamation point at the end of it,
We should have had it blinking.
saying we're doing really well.
It also includes capital.
But I didn't get that from the financial type.
Yeah, and we might want to point out that that also includes capital facility fees, so we can
Yeah.
include all those in there, but we can meet it without including the capital facility fee. That's why it's so high.
Yeah.
Another point just to make, excuse me, Tom, is the prior speaker before the budget, the audit started, was paying off debt. Just so the board understands, we are paying principal and interest. We're not just paying off interest, which is what has gotten a lot of agencies in trouble.
Right, just
We're
paying
them
debt
both.
service.
Yeah, they're just paying debt service. We're paying the whole thing down.
John, is there a point where that number becomes too big? Is it over 5? At what point are we just charging too much and we need to start giving back?
Yeah, and what we have is, if you don't mind, jump in there. We have a goal of, Water Authority has a goal of 1.5. It's kind of arbitrary. Our goal with debt service coverage is to meet our covenant, just our covenant, but to meet it without any volatile revenues and without any uncertain revenues. So when we're doing analysis and we're projecting ahead, especially considering rates, what we're going to do is we want to meet that 1.15. We want to carve out capital facility fees, and we want to carve out property tax. Capital facility fees being your volatile. You don't look what's happened. It's gone from 2 million to 7 million, back to 2 million in the last few years. And then property tax, state is always looking to take away our property tax. And actually, when the rating agencies came in and saw that we were being that conservative to take that uncertainty out to make our targets, they were very impressed at that. So that's what we're looking to do, meet our covenant only, but without that uncertain stuff. If we're meeting our, 2 times our covenant, plus we had, those fees, then I'd say that's too high.
I agree, and I would definitely like to be 3 times over than 1.5 times over. However, historically speaking, from a district, have we ever been higher than 3.1?
A couple of years ago, we were higher because of that property tax revenue that we didn't anticipate coming in from the RDA dissolution. That jumped us over, and then we went. We've traditionally haven't been this high. We've been usually between 1.5 and 2.5. When in the 2007 to 2010, I think we were about in that range, which is good. Which is a good range. Yeah.
If you want, we can bring you back a historical trend on that.
Yeah, just
if you'd like
curious,
to
I
see
mean,
it.
if it gets to, if we're sitting here next year and it's at 4.1 or 2, at what point do we have to kind of reevaluate things?
Yeah.
That's my
We
own.
always look out. Boom, we're always looking out, not short term. So you'll see in our budget document, and we can bring that to you, we actually project for the next 5 years what that ratio is. So we actually have that debt service coverage. And that's when, exactly what to your point, if in year 5, well, we're still at, 6. Okay, that's too much revenue that we can bring our rates down. And that's the actual planning we do.
Well, then a follow-up question is, so what was this year predicted at 3 years ago?
That's a good question. I got to look at that.
Yeah,
I don't know if off the top of my
You brought that
head.
up yourself, yeah.
But actually, you can look right in the budget, and it's in there. So it's easy to. No, in fact, I'll look it up while John's
Well,
talking.
there's
about
something to
that.
look at, you might be paying off, I mean, it's good to pay principal off, but as a ratepayer, you're looking at it differently than a homeowner, I guess. So,
Mhm.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Thanks for the exclamation point.
Yeah. So, the last couple things on the MD&A is we talked about capital projects, long-term assets that we acquired, and those are all budgeted. So when we look at that, that's what we should be seeing based on what we budgeted. The balance of the MD&A talks about the 2015 budget itself, what considerations did we take, and what we anticipate the economy. And then also had to contact the financial management of the district in case they're reading and they have questions, the users of the statements. With that said, it was a good year. Proven leadership, good policies, and so I'll turn it back over to David to walk you through.
Hey,
It's
quick.
nice- wait,
Go right ahead.
I was just gonna say, isn't it nice of Director Powell to leave us with so much money?
That's the leadership, that's the leadership John was just talking about. John, a quick question, what is our true, I want to say, I don't want to call it a rainy day fund, reserves? What's the true reserves unspoken for?
Actually, I'm gonna get to that in the.
You're gonna get that? Okay.
In the drought, we have separated by water and sewer.
Okay.
And I've got it separated out by, there is 7.2 million, I think is the number, 7 point.
John just makes it so simple, you always add a whole lot of.
All right, go for it, John.
I was gonna direct it to the reserve report in the
Yeah, that's gonna say, that was page, I think 19,
board packet. Was it page 19? Okay, I got some.
or no.
But true
23.
unencumbered.
23.
Page
True
23.
unencumbered numbers.
23, there we go, yeah. Okay, so we're looking at, for our water replacement, what we have is 17.7 million, but then in our water capacity, we have a -5. So when we're looking at water, we're looking at 12.
12.
We have $12 million.
For water.
In reserve.
In reserve. Now, when we look at
That's
sewer, that's.
Unfettered, okay, and then
Um,
sewer.
Well, we do have this year's budget that is whatever we decided that we were gonna take from reserves, from this year's budget, if anything, would come out of that. This is just where we stand as of October 31st in this statement here.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and then in the sewer fund, we have 23 million less the 3 million in there, so we're looking at 20 million there.
Okay, totally unencumbered. Now, the 17 million, 17 million or 12 million?
12,
For water?
yeah, 12 and 20.
And what are we taking out of that this year?
The list of capital projects
I get that.
that are above that, on that page.
Right.
Those are the capital projects that were budgeted. So that's where that money comes from to pay for those capital projects.
So it really isn't unencumbered then, it is,
Part of it's not because it's a
Yeah.
floating number.
yeah.
But that's where we pay for our capital facilities rather than issue debt.
Okay, so it's not truly unencumbered. Is the sewer truly unencumbered?
No, the sewer actually has more projects than the water.
So money in those budgets is already spoken for.
Provided we do everything in the budget that we said.
Right. So do we have any reserves whatsoever that's unencumbered by future reserves? By future projects that you already have or you are contemplating having? Or is it zero out?
Would you say that?
We have we report every month, you see that report that we have on page 23, and it shows what we've spent and what we're setting aside for operation, our operating reserve. It has all those carve-outs. So the bottom line, what you see is the replacement reserve. What was the replacement reserve, John, on page 23?
The floor is 4.7?
Was 17, yeah, the 17.7 million that he mentioned, but that's for the projects that we have coming up that are budgeted, and that's for anything that's unscheduled replacements also.
The actual, if it's 3 million or 4 million or 5 million, we don't have that number.
Okay.
Yeah, we'd have to get that.
Okay.
It's not actually spelled out here.
But it's roughly 3, 4, or 5 million, it's not 17.
We don't have $40 million just sitting around for no purpose.
Right.
Yeah, all right, we've got them for the future projects that we've budgeted.
Okay, so it's already spoken for, so it's not truly a reserve, it's, you already know where you're gonna be spending it as you go along.
Yeah.
But that's what a reserve is. It's reserved for those projects, for anything unanticipated. And if it gets to a higher level, if it gets to a level.
I guess that was my question, was unanticipated reserve, thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah, these are not, this is not just 40 million we have laying around just in case.
For unanticipated reserve, I guess.
part of
that's my
it is
question.
for unanticipated. Part of it's for what's budgeted, and then also unanticipated.
We'll have to get you that number.
So do we have unanticipated somewhere?
We're
Yes,
anticipating we'll have some unanticipated ones. That's for.
How much are you anticipating?
That's 17 million less the
No, because that's
2.5
encumbered.
that we
You
spent.
already know that 17 million is being spoken for of a project.
No, it's not spoken for. A part of it is for the, what we've budgeted coming up, and I've got that in the budget somewhere, but it's, water wasn't that much. Sewers, most of the projects are in sewer. But then there's always that, we don't plan on a reserve that's only for what we budget. We plan for something above that for those unanticipated things, and it's probably about 15 million actually, because water only has about 2.5 for this year. But again, it's a long look ahead, and then if you look ahead, there's other projects coming on as well. So it's
Well, but we don't have that number anywhere in on our,
No, it's not in the audit, it's not part of this
the audit
process.
is history.
Right.
The audit was 13, 14,
Right.
you know, and we try to report to you more timely.
We'll have to
each
give you
month.
the 5-year, what we need to give you is the 5-year lookout that we have, because the 17 might drop to 15, next year it might drop down to 9, the year after that it might come back to 13, and it might drop back down to 6.
And that's what we do in
It's dependent on
budget.
when we build the project, so that's why we do a 5-year lookout, so that we're not setting rates to what Director Snell was getting to. We're not setting rates that when we have a huge chunk of money at 3 times over, well, couldn't we be at 2.5? Well, yeah, but you pull the capital out, you pull the expenses out, and then you project your rates based on that coverage without it. So this isn't a true picture. You need a 5-year look to see what the reserves do up and down during the process.
And in the
We have
budget,
to
we
give it
actually
to you.
have 5, this report you see, we've actually have 5 of them for each year that we project
Yeah.
with this level of detail.
This is just this year.
Yeah.
So it could be 3 million extra one year, it could be 7 the next year, it could be 2 million, it could be 10. It just depends on what we have projected out for capital.
And then,
Go right ahead, Director.
and then that's why we have our reserve floor and ceiling. Our
Correct.
goal is that we hope we always have 4.7 for an unexpected emergency.
Oh, yeah, more than that, yeah, we
But
hope to.
that's our minimum.
Yeah, that's
our
why-
Oh, the minimum,
amount.
that's correct,
Right.
that's correct.
And then we feel like if we get to the ceiling at 20 million, then that's when we may think maybe we want to use it to keep the rates down or something.
And you're,
Anything
We're
that
trying
accumulates,
But we never know. We do know some, but we don't know. what
no,
it
it's
is.
just for unanticipated, but
Okay.
whatever accumulates above that is rate stabilization.
And then we have it sometimes been below the replacement reserve floor a few
Correct.
years back.
During the
right?
recession.
years
we're
back,
below.
yeah.
Okay, I remember that.
Yeah.
All right.
And what the board direction then was, okay, we don't want to do a sudden increment of rate increase, bring us back a plan for a 3 to 5 year recovery to get us back within the floor and ceiling. That's how we came out of that deficit.
Not to beat a dying horse, but how do you know when you reach that 20 million cap? Seeing as you really don't know what that number is.
20 million what?
Well, that is the total.
4.7 is here, 20 million's here.
Correct.
Well, how do you know when you hit 20 million?
It's
right
right on
there.
your report,
It's on your
on
report.
page 23.
So where are we right now?
I'll tell you.
17 million.
No, I'll go back to that.
Yeah. When that 17.7 million becomes 20.9, that's when you hit the
That's when
ceiling,
we've hit it.
and then anything over that becomes rate
Makes you really a
stabilization.
workshop.
So you got 3.2 million before you hit the ceiling.
Yeah.
okay.
3.2 million.
Yes, that's why it's provided to you monthly, because like I said, it's very volatile. We could spend 7 million out of there, then boom, you're down here. But then that's why we look at a 5-year, because if we try to establish rates on a yearly, if you may recall, we showed you the chart on what would happen if we tried to set our coverage based on the debt and the revenue each year, we would have a 3% increase in rates. Next year, because we're over, we'd have a 3.5% decrease or 7% decrease, then we'd raise the rates again. So that's why we don't do it on an annual basis. You look at a 5-year. And then if we do go over that max, when you make your decision on budget that year, if it's over the max, you would use that as rate stabilization to reduce your fees. So but you're looking at a snapshot in time. It's not indicative of what the long term is.
Thank you. Thank you. No other questions? Go right ahead, John.
Bring
Are you
David-
done?
I'll bring David back up. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
With the
Good
MD.
job.
Yeah.
Thanks, John.
David, just walk you through the rest of the financial statements, and if you have any-
By the way, John, you sent John to our last SDLA, and I thought it was great that he was out there.
Good.
You bought dinner, you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Director
Just
Martin,
joking. Just
if,
joking.
President Martin, if I may, 3.54 was what we projected for the end of this year anyway, in our budget. I don't have last year's budget.
3.54
Last year's budget would have been a
Leftover.
projection for this one.
Unanticipated reserves.
Unencumbered.
.54 is the debt service coverage ratio predicted for the end of the fiscal year we're in now.
Okay, and right now it's 3.11.
3.1. Well, at the end of, as of June 30, 2014.
So we're predicting it to be even higher.
Correct. Yeah.
It should go up if you're not incurring new debt and you're paying off
Correct.
debt. And even
It
if
should
your
go up.
revenue stays flat,
Yeah.
it
It
would
would
go
go
up.
up.
It's not our only target. We look at a whole bunch of other targets. So, some targets going to be higher than others, some will be lower than others, but we look at many things. Cash, number of days of operations in cash and things like that. So we look at a lot of targets when we do our planning.
Okay, I was just going to briefly go over the statements and notes, and then if you have any questions, then I would certainly be happy to answer those questions. I was going to start on the statement of net position. It's on page 44. And then as John mentioned, that this is in the public sector, that this would be called a balance sheet. Actually, when we started the audit, it was called a statement of net assets, so there's been some terminology change. One of the nice things about having the comparative numbers is you can take a look at the 2014 and the 2013 years. Just want to point out a couple of things that you may notice. One is that starting from the top is the restricted cash and cash equivalents was down by about 4.2 million. It was 7.2 in the 2013 year, just over 3 million in the 2014 year. That was really a timing difference. Again, Tom or Dennis mentioned that this is really a point in time. So what happened during the 2013 year was that you had issued your bank loan to fund the San Marcos Interceptor project. And so that was, I think, a $7.1 million loan. And then there were still some funds that hadn't been spent yet as of the 2013 year, and that was about $4.2 million. So that's why that was up. Normally your restricted cash, so if you go back a few years, hovers around $3 million, because that's your 2005 bonds that you have a debt payment due the next day. So then we say that's restricted cash to cover both the principal and the interest payment. You can see that your unrestricted cash went up by 14.5 million compared to 8.1, and then your investments went up from about just over 2 million. And then when I talk about the cash flow statement, which I'll get to in a moment, then that'll explain why the cash increased. The other large increase there, that if you look in the accounts receivable from other governmental entities, 2.5 million in the prior year, 735,000 in the current year. That was a part of the true-up for the Encina Phase 5 that the district received a I don't know if rebate check is the right word, but they received a refund that because you had funded more of the Phase 5 project than you needed to fund. That was about $1.8 million that was received in the current fiscal, in the fiscal 14 year. Down in the non-current assets section, that we break capital assets into those assets being depreciated versus not. The difference there is that you depreciate projects once they are finished. So then while they're while they're in the construction phase, that they would be in the capital assets that which are not being depreciated. So that went up from 17 million to 24 million, mainly for that Interceptor program. You spent around $5 or $6 million during the year, but that's an ongoing project, or at least it was as of June 30. Down in the liability section, that you can see you did pay down debt. Down in the non-current liability section, that your loans net of the current portion were 5.8, they went down to 5.4, and then your COPs were at 62.8 down to 60.4. So then, like we talked about, that you are paying down principal as well as paying interest. So that's reflected there. And then the final section of that statement is the net. That's the net position statement. It's broken up into your investment in capital assets, then the restricted and the unrestricted sections. So are there any questions on the statement of net position?
I just want to clarify, I heard you right. So when we're building a project, it's a capital asset that's not depreciated.
Correct.
Then when it's done, it falls into the
It,
category
it
of
falls
net
into the
capital
next
that
part
is
down,
depreciated.
correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving to your next page, page 45 is your statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position. John went over this quite a bit, so unless there's other questions, I like to start from the bottom on this. So that if you look at, so that if you start at the bottom, that your net position at the end of the year, 256 million, ties to the statement of net position on the prior page. 2 lines up, you can see that it started at 249 million. Therefore, there was a $6.3 million change, and then if you then jump from the top down, then you can see all the revenues and expenditure items to get to that $6.3 million change. I was going to jump briefly to the cash flow statement, which is on your page 46 and 47. One thing I like about the cash flow statement is that it shows you just where all your cash went, because you do report on the accrual basis. For example, that when you bill out for water, that becomes a revenue item, even though you haven't collected the funds yet. So what the cash flow statement is, kind of backs those accruals out just to get to the cash that was spent. So again, I like to start on the bottom there, cash and cash equivalents at the end of the year. Now I'm on the bottom of page 46. Equaled 17.6 million, started at 15.3. So as John mentioned earlier, that you had a net increase in cash of 2.2 million. That doesn't quite explain things, because the way the cash flow works is if something is an investment as opposed to a cash and cash equivalent, then that gets backed out of this cash flow statement. And one of the reasons I like to start from the bottom to the top, because you can see that the next section up was the cash from investing activities, and that shows as a negative cash item because that was money invested. So I like to look at your total cash and investments as a total. So I would be apt to add that $1.6 million back into the $2.2 million increase. So then your total increase in both cash and investments both was really closer to 3.9 million. And then if you go up from there, continuing from the bottom up, then you see where you actually spent your money. So then that middle section is cash flows from capital and related financing activities. So that is both your building of your capital assets, and that's also your principal and your interest payments on your debt. It's also the capacity fees that were received in the current year. So all those types of activities in the district yielded cash outflows of 11.7 million. If you go above that, cash flows from non-capital and related financing activities, that's mainly from property taxes that you received just above $3 million during the year. And then you get from your actual cash from operations, which is the net cash from what you billed and so what you collected versus what you paid for water, salaries, benefits, and then just other items to vendors. So are there any questions on the cash flow statement?
Yes.
I just want to make sure I understood you right. So at the bottom, we have cash as in liquid, something we could use, basically, for
Basically.
this 2.2 million, give or take.
No, that's not what you have. That's how much the cash changed
Oh, the change,
during the
cash.
year. Cash.
But we also have, you're saying the 1.606044 was cash, and it's an investment, so we may be able to withdraw into cash on a 30 to 90 days, but
or sooner,
Is it
sure.
considered cash because it's
Cash and
bank.
cash and cash equivalents are that they are defined as investments made with a original maturity of 3 months or less. That so then LAIF, for example, that you put money into LAIF, well, you can actually take out a like dollar amount the next day, right?
Okay, so
But then if
3
you buy
months
a,
or less.
but if you buy a U.S. Treasury note, for example, you may buy it in March, but then it may not mature till August of the next year. Therefore, that's longer than a 3-month period. So
Okay.
that's an
The
investment,
Oh,
right?
thank you, I get it now.
If I can I just clarify one thing too? With our investment portfolio, all of our investments are readily marketable. So if ever there was a cash need, we can just readily market it.
Well, I understood that in
Yeah.
our investments. I was trying to understand exactly why it was pulled out as not cash and cash equivalent. To me, it would be a cash equivalent, but it's the 3 months that you use to divide it then into an investment.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, so if there's no questions on the cash flow statements, just the notes go into a lot more detail explaining the numbers on the statements. So, for example, Director Evans, that you asked about the capital assets. So if you go to page 58, then you'll see much more detail about the capital assets. And I have to get to my page because I'm not on page 50, not on page 58.
I would like to compliment on how this is really well stated, but it's so many numbers, and when you're not a number person, this little difference between cash and not cash that's in an investment activity.
Yeah.
It's very, very confusing, but I do understand that, and you did a lot of details.
The engineering version's a lot more simple.
Yeah.
How much do we
Well, can we
have?
get that next
How much can I
year?
spend?
You know, I think we as, normally we
At the
are
workshop,
thinking
let's
that way.
see.
I have
Okay.
cash and I don't have a cash budget.
Did you go to
That
school
was
with
very
Tom?
good explanation.
Yeah, I didn't go to school
Problem.
with him, but then I went to similar types of
That's the
courses.
problem.
Cash and
That's
this
the problem.
built in the other, that's all I know.
So then if you are looking on page 50, 58 of the capital assets, so like we had mentioned, construction and process, that you can see that it had a balance at the start of the year of 12.4 million, and there was actually 10 million of costs added. There were actually some finished projects of 3.3 million, but that's why that asset increased by the $6 or $7 million. Okay, and then you can see there that most of that $3.3 million that was actually taken out of CIP. If you look down at the additions for the capital assets being depreciated, that you'll see that there were about $3.2 million there. So that's where most of that flowed to.
Okay.
So that's what you had asked the question earlier, that when a project finishes, does it go from like the one bucket to the other bucket, and that's what it's doing.
Is this 3.301585, is that the same number that was on the main page that's coming out over 17? Isn't that number on the other? Oh, it's 3,171, just confusing me on capacity, way over on page 23. See, I get a number stuck in my head. So,
Oh, yeah.
forget it.
Just
Got it.
just other notes of highlight that there is a debt note, which starts on page 61 and goes through 64, and that goes into a lot of detail about your debt, including when they will be paid off, principal and interest payments when they are due, as of June 2014 going forward to when they'll be paid off. Otherwise, that there's notes about your PERS plan, there's notes about your OPEB plan, that there's actually segment reporting, because your 2005 COPS, I think, that they required that you break out your statements between water and sewer, because your 2005 COPS are paid only from your sewer, or are they paid from both?
Actually, they're paid from both.
Okay, they're paid partially from both those. So
They're secured from both.
Correct, is the correct term. And then if you just go toward the back, that there's some supplementary information that that just gives out much more, gives much more detail about the about the operating expenses broken out between the water and the wastewater segments. So I had no other comments unless there are questions on the board that I'd be happy to answer.
Questions from the board? Seeing none.
If none, this is just a note and file that we've received.
Note and file, we proceed.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Do you want to take a real quick breather and then roll through, or you want to push on through?
It's not
We can
that
push
bad.
on through, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. We have a lot of expensive people here. All right, item 2.2. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Maybe we'll see you next year.
Uh,
We have a 2.2. 2.1 to 2.2.
Normally
you approve the audit.
Oh, you're right, the second committee's note and file, this we do need a motion
Yeah,
and a second
you
to
should.
Oh, you
approve.
said note and file, so I thought you made
Yeah.
a decision to bring it to the next board meeting.
No, we
Next
need
meeting.
to approve it, it's the second board meeting this evening that it's note and file, sorry. So we do need a motion and second to accept.
Move for approval.
I'll second, but I have a couple comments. I agree with President Martin that this is by far the most important role that we have as a board. As you go around and you talk to people in the public and they ask you, well, what do you do as a board member? Obviously, the answer is we set policy, we serve as checks and balances, and that's exactly what this is. And I wish they were still here, but to have a 9-day audit and to come back, and I don't care how good the processes are, I don't care that they've been doing it for 5 years, and not have one recommendation, one finding, just human ear when you have $55 million of revenue coming in and $44 million of expenses going out, something's going to happen. And I just don't buy it. I'm sure that they did a good job. I'm sure that they looked at everything thoroughly, but I am disappointed that there's no feedback whatsoever as to what, maybe even a best practice that we're not perfect.
Well, I would have to take exception to that, Director Snella. You have an exceptional staff here.
I know we do.
And I understand that you may look at it, but again, when you look at the scope of what an auditor looks at, they do random, they check areas and they check the mass balance of money coming in and money going out. You have a day-to-day staff that gets down in the nuts and bolts and the weeds that makes sure that every penny adds up. The board has set a very stringent policy and process that we follow, and we take great pride in that fact. I can understand why you might be surprised, but I will also tell you that we've had a clean bill of health, and I don't think you'll find anything said about this district from either a rating agency or anybody else that has any concerns financially, period.
Yeah, and I'm not suggesting that there's anything that has prompted me to be suspicious in any way whatsoever. I'm just saying from just a human error standpoint, there's a lot of moving parts, even when we're having the discussion to try to determine what exactly our reserves are. We can't really even come up to a real quick answer on that. There's just so many different variables here, so many different people involved. To have a thorough audit and not have one finding is concerning to me.
So noted. Thank you.
And just to kind of address that slightly, I didn't understand the audit process that you go through completely last year. I understand it better this year. But say out of the million transactions that the water district did in the last year of all different types, they come in and they do a sampling of 10,000 out of a million. I don't know what the numbers are exactly. And in those, they didn't find anything wrong. It doesn't mean that the mistakes weren't made, decimal points weren't put here or there. It just means in the ones they sampled, they didn't find anything that was off that much to warrant. Because last year I made a joke out of the fact they found a widget on the wrong shelf. And I thought that was silly, I have to put that in the report just because. So this year they didn't find anything, but I'm just saying, from what they randomly checked, they didn't see any problem of significance. That doesn't mean there weren't errors of $100, $200, $300, because I asked him that, he said, no, $1,000, not with cash, but with other things, $1,000, we just note and file and tell the department manager. But if it's tens of thousands, so I think small ones, they let go. But next year, I think we'll know a lot better.
Yeah. Well, and again, like I said, and you are correct, it's a random sampling. They look at magnitude. If you look at the budget, and there's notes at the bottom of the reports that we provide you, they look at magnitude of difference. They look at rationale. If there's a variance in expenditures between this month and last month, and it's 27%, but it's only $13,000, who cares? So they set a 27% plus a cash value that says, okay, if you're off 50,000, okay, we better look and take a note at it, because a lot of it, again, is what we start with at the beginning of the year and where the budget ends. In between, we're doing this all year. Are there little errors and mistakes made? Probably, but I would almost guarantee you they get caught going through the process internally.
And I would, just as I did last year, again, I don't mean by, it's trust but verify. And when I said it last year, I didn't, and I don't speak for Mike, but we didn't mean to impugn anyone's integrity. It's just that you don't find any mistakes, and what I learned last year is, yeah, they do, but if they're not of any quantitative substance, it doesn't come before us, because it's like an error here, an error there. They look at what the error was.
And I'm gonna have to support staff on that. Personally, in the dealings that I've had with the district in my last little adventure of putting in a sewer line, the estimated cost.
I thought you were retired.
I'm trying to get there. The estimated cost versus the actual expenditure was less, and the differential was noted to the penny, And so, again, I think you hit it right on the head. $57 million, if there's a fluctuation of minor degree, yeah, there was a mistake, okay, fine, or a decimal in the wrong place,
Yeah.
but it was insignificant, and rather than bring that to our attention, that instead of 57 million, it was 56,982,014 I think, I think that's where the surprise that Director Sinella has identified.
Director Paul.
Well, this is about accounting principles, and it's nothing new. It's accounting principles are nothing new. So this is a very reputable firm, and just because there were no recommendations, I don't think it's appropriate to say that we don't feel that it was a good audit. Perhaps the next time you should demand that they make some recommendations, and maybe that'll make you feel better. I don't know, but when we're doing things according to standard accounting principles, and it agrees with these people who are only 4 or 5 or so that do this sort of work in San Diego County, I think it's time to say congratulations.
Director Evans?
Well, to follow on both Director Codal and Director Hernandez, I understand it's maybe surprising to not find a flaw, but I thought they did a very good job of explaining that they are looking at the principles, and if it's minor, it's not something they do. And I feel our responsibility as a board, and obviously the boards before us as well, have made a point of setting up wonderful, very stringent policies of what our expectations are. And we are blessed with staffing that does a really good job. So if I'm pleased with what they did, I think it was very thorough. I understand it was a sampling, but I think they were looking for, if there was something to report of significance, that they would have. And I also feel that the purpose of an audit, there's human error, yes, but, some kids will get 100% on every single spelling test for 3 years in a row. Am I supposed to assume they should have made one? Or if I just that's kind of what they're doing, they're sampling. And I don't feel, as a board member, I need the ratepayers to pay someone to audit us line by line by line.
Of course not.
So we need to accept a sample, and I think they did a wonderful job. And having seen last year's and looked back at a few others, our district has held up really well. So I do commend staff, and I appreciate what Director Portal and Jim Hernandez both said, that there's a point at which you let go and trust, and I really trust it. So thank you.
And
Director
just to close out, and I'll reiterate, I'm not questioning anybody's integrity or your processes. I know you guys do a great job, and I have full confidence in you. But to Director Portal's comment and to President Martin's comment earlier, next year I do think we do need to be more involved.
Sure.
Have a workshop, and maybe we do need to Mr. Portal's comment, maybe we need to look at the scope that we're asking the auditor to look at. I don't know how large of a sample they took over 9 days, but there's a lot of activities to look at, and that's something that we can look at next year.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll have a workshop leading in, and they'll explain what I'll have them do, whoever it may be, explain what the auditing standard is. So they may say, okay, it's 5% of this, it's 20 of that, it's 2% of this. And that way the board understands, and if there's flexibility in what the scope is, that would be the time.
Director Hernandez?
Tom, in the corporate world, there are levels of audits, and I can't recall the most stringent level. Do you know what that term is?
Audit is the most stringent.
Sorry?
There's levels of
Audit is.
services that they provide. The lowest level's a compilation, the second level's a review. You're probably very familiar with review because a lot of contracting companies get reviews for bonding, and then the highest level is an audit. And that's what this is.
And this is an unqualified opinion.
I thought there was something
Ethically.
special. It had
There's
something
an,
audit.
there's an
something,
agreed
or
upon
something audit.
process. If you wanted to do something
okay.
special,
Yeah.
there's what they call an agreed upon process.
Agreed upon
But-
procedure.
Yeah, or procedure rather. Okay, but, this is the highest level for public agencies, and the standards have gotten more and more stringent, and they're more and more careful on these things. So you have an unqualified opinion, and that's
You might be thinking
really
of
good.
And I think if
program audits, there's program audits, there's different type audits like that.
And if we get more
Single
involved
audit.
early on, I think that'll help, because even the presenter couldn't really tell us what significance meant to him. He said a few hundred or a few thousand. It reminds me of the joke you hear about Congress, $1 billion here and $1 billion there, and before we were talking about real money. Well, what is it? And we're just like Congress, but at a much smaller scale, and we're right here to represent the people and watch out for their money, and we should know what that number is and exactly what they're looking at and take this seriously.
Sure. And I think next year when we move into the process, we'll find that.
Just to reiterate, I think next year, the process, we should be involved earlier.
Sure.
And potentially there are things that maybe we want to know more about, or we want audited and checked.
Sure.
And I'm sure we pay extra for that, but the board decides that's what they want to do. But they'll have the opportunity to meet with the people ahead of time and get a good understanding.
You bet.
Thank you. All right. Yes, I was just going to say, I think we need a roll call vote.
Director Evans?
Yes.
Director Hernandez?
Yes?
Director Polo?
Yes.
Director Pinella?
Yes.
Director Martin?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, now, 2.2, Mr.
Yes, I don't know what I was looking at. Never mind.
You're looking at next month.
Maybe.
But don't you never get to it. We have a rather austere, and I'm going to try to read it because it deserves being read, rather than just doing whereases and whereases. But it will start off a resolution number 1458. I hope that's a lucky number for you, 1458.
Any
Resolution of the Board of Directors for the Vallecitos Water District expressing appreciation for the services of James W. Podel. What does the W stand for? You don't-
William.
William?
William.
W. Whereas the Board of Directors regrets the retirement of James Podel from the board, and whereas James Podel served Vallecitos Water District for 8 years, beginning with his appointment in 2006 and serving through the years as the district representative to the Encina Wastewater Authority Board, currently serving as president. EWA Policy Finance Committee, serving previously as chair, California Association of Sanitation Agency delegate, and on the LAFCO Advisory Committee. She had a busy 8 years. Whereas James W. Podel served the district for those 8 years with integrity, great skill, and devotion, demonstrating his ability to work with other board members, customers, and employees of the district. Now, whereas James W. Podel has performed a wide range of duties in support of district activities, and whereas the Board of Directors desired the public recognition of the services of James W. Podel on behalf of the district be given. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Directors of the Vallecitos Water District as follows. Section 1. The Board of Directors of the Vallecitos Water District, on behalf of themselves, the management and personnel of the district, and the citizens of the district, does hereby express its appreciation for the very valuable and professional work performed by James W. Podel, and wishing him the best fortune in his future. Section 2, the contribution, diligent efforts, and selfless service of James W. Podel on behalf of this district and his devoted loyalty are hereby commended as part of the permanent record of the Vallecitos Water District. And we'll do a roll call vote, but we'll assume this is going to be passed, approved, and adopted by the Board of Directors of the Vallecitos Water District at a regular meeting held on the 19th day of November, 2014, by the following roll call vote.
Motion and a second?
Motion and a
Motion to
second.
approve.
There's a motion and a second.
Director Evans?
Yes.
Director Hernandez?
Hardy, yes.
Director Paul?
Yes, yes, said yes.
Director Snell?
Yes.
Director Martin?
Yes,
Thank you.
congratulations. Thank you. There's gonna be a photo opportunity.
Yeah, if you guys
Well,
want, just
hang
ride
on,
along
hang on.
there, Hal,
So-
and then we can get the logo right behind you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
Thanks. I want to say thanks to Hal for reading that out loud. And, no, it is an honor, but that's probably the last time it'll be read, so. Very nice job. I did want to say that it's been an honor. It's been an honor to represent my constituents. It's been an honor to represent Vallecitos Water District, and most of all, the employees. And so as a part of that, I wanted to say that I'm really humbled by the professionalism that I've witnessed here. So it has to do with professionalism, their commitment, and really the ingenious planning and forethought that has gone on before that has made me so aware of the water industry itself. And I am just forever grateful to be a part of it for this little spot in historic time, that I can say that for a while I had something to do with providing people with water and sanitation services at such a quality level. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunities.
Thank you.
So where do you want us?
Why don't you guys just stand right there, that way we can get the logo behind you, and everybody.
Come to the middle.
Should be plenty of
Come
room
to the
over
middle,
there.
Jim. Right behind that, to the center.
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 You're the
Yeah.
camera guy.
And then if you'll switch places with Betty.
Oh, excuse me.
Always directing.
There we go. All right.
Yeah. Put on the house tie and jacket and switch places.
Suck it up. We all will.
Jim's gonna pass out holding his stomach in.
Yeah. Gain a half an inch that I've missed.
Thanks for putting up.
I would say thank you to my one constituent out there, Craig.
I gotta say, those are some considerable shoes to fill. As a division leader there.
Thank you, Craig.
All right.
Good luck, by the way.
Annual board transition in December, board meeting update. It looks like because on December 3rd, we will all be at Aqua, or the majority of us are at Aqua. We'd like to change that date to either December 8th or December 10th. Does anyone have a preference?
I would appreciate it if we could do it on December 10th.
10th?
The 10th.
Anyone have a problem with meeting on the 10th?
That's fine.
You good with that, Jim?
Your installation.
Perfect.
10th, okay.
Perfect. We'll just note that the prior meeting will not have a quorum, and then we'll just agendize it for the 10th.
And I'd like the meeting to start at 4:03, just in case I'm late.
And, okay, and we're gonna go with our drought update.
Well, no, you need to take your action to nominate your incoming president and vice president. There's two parts to the memo. One is the transition.
I'm sorry, my fault.
Yeah, you jumped to the second part of it, so.
Nomination from the floor, and I would make the nomination that we nominate Betty Evans as the incoming chair, president,
Second.
and Mike Sinella as the incoming vice president.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Let's do a roll call.
Director Evans?
Yes.
Director Fernandez?
Oh, yes.
Director Polk?
Yes.
Director Pinelli?
Yes.
Director Martin?
Yes.
Perfect. So just so you know, when we come through, I'll have a process that we'll move through, but when we do come in next time, the first order of business will be swearing in of Director Sinella and Craig. Then the seats will already be established.
Director Hernandez.
And,
Oh, yeah.
oh, that's right, that's right. even though
New
you never
term,
ran.
guys.
That's right.
I thought we were gonna swear him out later.
I did that last week.
Oh, okay.
Then what we'll do is the chair is already selected now, so we don't have to go through that process that first time. And then the next order of business will be the committee appointments and recommendations from the chair. That'll be the first order of business, and then we just move right into the agenda as a normal process. So we'll have that spelled out in the next board meeting for you. Thank you. Make it a lot easier.
2.4, drought update.
Yes, you have before you, starting on page 86, the monthly drought update, and winter started on November 1st, our winter water restrictions, so we're down to 1 day a week for watering, still a 10-minute limit on that, with the exception of water efficient sprinklers like drip and rotary.
And I'm sorry, I
sprinklers.
just missed that while I was going through this. Status quo is what you're telling me.
No, before November 1st, we were 3 days a week was the maximum 10 minutes. Now we switched to 1 day a week on irrigation starting November 1st.
And how
Is
are
the
people
restriction.
notified of that?
Actually, it was the notification in the very beginning when we sent out that was,
And do you really think people keep that and they put it on their refrigerator?
and we also did billing footers and things like that to get it out. It's on our webpage. There
On
was
the
a banner,
webpage and the-
banner on our webpage.
Don't worry, if they go out and see him doing it, it'll be a warning.
We
It won't be a
tweeted it
fine.
too.
Yeah, we're not gonna, just mind them.
I have a question relative to that, Mr.
Go ahead,
President. The day of the month, does that ever, tell me the relevance of, we went from 3 to 1, we've not had any water. Does that just mean too bad? It's supposed to be the rainy season, but if it's not, that's the way the mop flops.
That's our current ordinance now, and that's pretty much the model ordinance that everybody has.
Yeah.
So, and considering the severity, of this drought, yeah.
What I brief you on a little bit in my report might sway you one way or the other. Then depending on what you hear from me, I was coming back in December to give the board a little more update on whether you want to stay at 1 or stay at 3.
Okay.
But there's a lot going on right now, and
My lawn's dead anyway, so.
Director Evans will be getting an earful of it tomorrow at the Water Authority,
Okay.
So does that mean we still need to pay our bills though for the water?
on time.
Okay.
Just one day.
I'm just checking to make sure, just in case. Okay. Thank you for that
Yeah, sure.
great drought update.
Yeah.
Was it over already?
Resolution for
Yes.
revised
You're
basic
done.
agreement 2.5.
Yes, you may recall Director Podel, well, I've almost forgotten his name already.
Yeah, how quickly they forget. How quickly.
One a few
Yeah, he needs to
warehouses.
read that, he needs to read that.
You know, it's a tough bunch. Both of our representatives last board meeting, they spoke about how the revised basic agreement was reviewed at both committee levels for expansion of Phase 5. The revised basic agreement sets forth the ownership, sets forth how you make payments, and the basic rules of how Encina operates, including infringement upon somebody else's capacity. So it provides all the basics on how we play together nicely over at Encina. With the completion of Phase 5, one of the items the auditor spoke about was there was a big influx of cash.
2.9, well, it started at 2.9, it came down a little bit.
Yeah, around 2.9
About 2 million.
million. That was prepayment that Vallecitos had made for the expansion of the plant. That's why there was that big credit that came back from Encina. Over the last several months, the member agency managers, we've been going through the revised basic agreement to determine the amount of changes that needed to be made to reflect Phase 5 expansion. It started out with a little bit of a push to revamp the whole document. We managed to get that back on track of just change the numbers that changed. So that's what you have before you today. The Encina Board has already reviewed and approved the revised basic agreement. Now what they need is a resolution from each agency adopting and supporting it. I could answer, but the basics, what you can see is we went from 7.54 MGD of solids capacity to 10.47 MGD of solids capacity. Keep in mind, that's not how much solids we actually send. It's the amount of solids that the equivalent gallons would be. So we have 10.5 million gallons of equivalent. We might only be sending them 1 million gallons. It's just a ratio. So don't take that as to mean we have that much actual liquid. From the liquid standpoint, you'll notice there we went from 7.54 to only 7.67 because we have 5 million gallons per day of treatment at Meadowlark, so we have a total of 12.6. So that's the difference. You'll notice there's 5 million, 12 million, 2 million gallon difference between solids and liquid. That's where we've been talking to the board that the next expansion of Encina, when it has to happen for treatment, will be Vallecitos, because we're the only one left that needs more capacity. So sometime around 2025-ish, we'll be looking at needing to build or buy more capacity. That's fundamentally all that's changed in the report, and staff would recommend that you adopt the resolution accepting the new revised basic agreement.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, can I have a roll call, please?
This will be resolution 1459. Director Evans?
Yes.
Director Hernandez?
Yes.
Director Polter?
Yes.
Director Sinella?
Yes.
Director Martin?
Yes. Item 2.6, local project participant agreement for the North San Diego County Regional Recycled Water Project.
You may recall we've been talking about this project. We've briefed the board on it several times. This is the loose group that works in the North County that goes after the funding. Olevenhain is our representative that makes the application to the Water Authority for the funds. We received the $387,000 the last time, which is paying for another project. We have put in funds, requests for additional funds. I want to say we've asked them for another $1.5 million out of the total. San Diego did, there was a disbursement on Proposition 84 last year, and it got into a little bit of a battle with the Department of Water Resources, where they arbitrarily took San Diego's chunk, which was about 12.9 million, and reduced it down to about 7 million. Yet they gave Orange County and LA County their full allocation. So we did go back as a group and we got the full allocation. So what this agreement here is that any additional funds that we can get through the funding, if they're released, it goes, we have to sign this agreement on an annual basis. Olevenhain is the lead agency that gets the funds, and then it's actually dispersed to us to build any projects that we identify.
To us is the other agency.
To us is Vallecitos.
Vallecitos?
Yes.
Not the other agencies involved in this group.
Well, they all have their own dollar amounts that they put
Oh.
in. Like Carlsbad might have asked for 3 million. Vista might have asked for some. It's varied county-wide. And then what happens is down at the Water Authority, there's a local resource planning, local project planning group. You have 2 representatives from South County, 2 representatives from North County. They get together so that it's not swayed that South County gets more money than North County or vice versa. And it actually works through the Water Authority as well. Maria Mariscal, which Director Evans has probably met, she works in that process as well to make sure the grants are equally distributed. There's no cost to this agreement. It's just an annual agreement that we sign that says we will use the money for the proper purpose.
Director Evans?
Thank you. So this is, we asked for and would get 338,000?
We already got that. That's an example of one that we
Oh,
got
that's
prior,
the
received.
example.
On
Okay.
page 143 at the bottom is 10.5 million. I said 12.7, but it was 10.5 million. That's the total that's been applied for the area.
For San Diego?
Yeah.
Okay. So we don't know what portions are? So
No, not yet.
And Olevenhain's the lead agency?
Yeah, you have to have a lead agency that does it, otherwise you would have 12 of us turning in the same application to the same thing, and then we go through 12 different people.
And there's gonna be a benefit to them, is there an administration fee or something?
We don't pay them, they do it on our behalf.
It's a freebie,
Freebie.
interesting. But it does take time, doesn't it? for this-
Yes, Joey is one of the gentlemen that came, you met him a long time ago when he first came to explain this to the board. Randall, Joey Randall. He handles it on behalf, and that's just Olevenhain's donation to the effort.
And what's our donation to the effort?
The staff time that we put into the meetings monthly, where we go over and talk to them, make sure we coordinate. I didn't actually take the position, this time they were gonna actually have me be the North County representative for the distribution of the funds. I had enough things going on, so I said no.
Finally, you said no.
I get a little bit smarter as I get older. But it's in kind, everybody just does in-kind services. And the other thing, we do that are in-kind services, when they're grant funds, I think these are 25, 75% match. So our in-kind services takes care of our 25% portion. That's how we add that up.
Make a motion.
Now, are we the lead agency for someone else, for another group? that-
No, Lebanon does it on all our behalfs.
No, I'm saying, do we do it for another conglomerate?
No,
There's nothing like
So
that.
we're
No.
not the lead agency for anybody?
nope.
Lehman generally takes that role, don't they?
In this whole project, they have taken it.
Thank you. Need a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Move, second.
Accept recommendation.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone against? Unanimous.
Thank you.
Save Diane's voice.
Hmm.
For better
Hard to tell them apart.
Surplus personal property listing, 2.7.
We actually brought one of these before the board, I think it was at the last board meeting. If we have surplus property over $1,000 in value, the board has to declare it surplus before we can take it to auction. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
What are our really big trucks called, the vacuums?
Vectors?
Factors.
Vectrons, Vectors?
Do we have one that's really old, or does it just look very old? The cab. It has little windows in it, and I saw it the other day, and I went, that looks old, it looks like it's from the 40s.
What was that one that blew up?
You weren't in it.
Does it have, does it have everything stripped off of it as far as our decals and all that?
No, your decals are still on, I think.
How long ago
It
did
was
you?
over on Linda Vista, I thought they were working,
How long ago did you see?
this week. Monday.
No, we have three new ones that are operating that are fairly new, and we have the fourth one that we've already declared surplus that we'll sell out of state.
Yeah, I thought maybe you saw the
But it's
fourth one in the
not on the
yard,
road?
but it's not on the road.
That was the last one that you saw.
That's one of the new ones I saw, because it looked old, I'm like, wow.
Are you sure it was, ours, they all look the same if you didn't see the decal. The city has some and county runs
Yeah,
around.
maybe.
Ours are pretty,
They just
ours are
look-
relatively new.
I've seen our new ones, they look really sharp, so I was surprised.
Yeah, we don't have any right now that are.
Yeah.
Where was it that I saw in the news, that one blew up? Where was that? Did you hear it?
A Vector blew it?
Where?
Oh, I hadn't heard
Yeah,
that.
yeah, it was a big deal. But I can't remember where it was.
Pretty sure it wasn't us.
Go count.
I'll go check.
One, two, three.
Diane would have told us.
3 in the yard, we're okay, huh? Thank you very much, I was just curious. So, need a motion and a second?
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
So moved. California Water Conservation Council Group 1 Board of Directors Representatives Election.
After we spoke at the pre-board, I went back, because I remember we brought it last year. This is an annual election, and what the board's direction last year was, because of not being very familiar with the other people out of the area, we recommended, and the board took our recommendation, was just to adopt and vote for the South Region, which would be Los Angeles, Met, and San Diego County Water Authority as our reps. So if that's the board's pleasure, I'd recommend we turn the ballot in just voting on the South Region only.
I would recommend a motion on what staff just said.
I would move to what staff just said.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye. All right, yeah, great. Reports, General Manager.
Diane, could you throw that up, please?
You actually have something?
This is it. You may recall back in August when the board went into stage 3 following the direction of the Water Authority. Stage 2, thank you. Thank you. If we were in stage 3, we would be very happy right now. When we went in stage 2, Freudian, I gave a little history because some of the concern that most of the managers have when we've been having our meetings for the last 6 months is I lived through this era, and there's only about 3 of us on the board down there now that did. And it came on so rapidly, we're starting to see the same thing happen now. You can see stage 1 was declared by Metropolitan Water District November 20th of 1990. Within 21 days, they went to 2. Within another 20-day period, they went to stage 3. They did not even have stage 5 4, 5, and 6, they did not have in their policy. They were having emergency meetings literally week after week, adoptive policy. And what's scary here is you can see they went from probably about a 5% curtailment. 4 months later, we were at 50% in the middle of March. And it actually was, that's the combined 50%. It was 70% ag. It was like 35% M&I. When we went into this in August, I updated the board what we were hearing from Metropolitan, and again, Director Evans is going to get a better briefing on this tomorrow. What we were hearing from Metropolitan back in that era was, last March, was they will start taking a look at where we stand right now come March or April of next year. I think I've given you the numbers. I think Met's got about 1.7 million, 1.6 million acre feet in storage. They're looking at a draw of 1.1 to 1.3 if they get the full allocation from the Colorado River Aqueduct, which they did this year. So the bottom line, what that says is if we get the full Colorado River Aqueduct, which was 103% of normal for the Sierras this year, and we don't get anything from Northern California, which is what we're anticipating, they theoretically could deplete their storage next year. Our concern has been that they're going to wait until March and start talking about this. That's going to make us, as water agencies, look pretty silly. When it's going to be like, really? You didn't know that it hadn't rained for the last 5 months and now you're doing this? So I actually met with staff today to really ramp up the outreach of what we're currently doing. Not start throwing stage 3 out yet, not start saying allocations, but really get the message out in every way we can. Our concern is, and I think it's going to come to fruition, now we've heard as of this week, they're going to their board in December.
Who is they?
Metropolitan. Staff's going to their board for direction of potential action in December. If they do that, we're still hearing they may not actually do anything until July. But I don't quite get that, and I'm going to guess that their board is going to say, we don't need to wait and then implement a 40% curtailment when we could have been doing 20% for the last 6 months. This is, I think, it's deja vu coming back as to what happened. And what our concern right now is that literally they may go to their board in December and have direction to move forward with either allocation-based or historical-based preferential rights on water supply. Again, Director Evans will report back on this later. You're going to get a good briefing tomorrow. We're just concerned, all the managers are, we're going to go from 0 to 60, 60%, 0 to 60 miles an hour really quick and go from maybe 20% curtailment to suddenly 40. We don't know. The bigger risk, and this is what I briefed the board on, and we're going to modify my memo to the developers, is if we suddenly do it, it's going to be a very short time frame where we go to 3. If we go to 3, no new meters, no new nothing. And if you don't have a meter and you haven't paid for it and you don't have a building permit, sorry, you're out of luck. That's regional basis on everybody. So we're going to start paying a lot more attention to this to keep the board apprised. But there's just some real strong concern right now that we could go from stage 2 at 20% to suddenly go into stage 3 at 30 or 40. Who knows? We don't know. The bigger fear that we also have is, you may recall that the State Water Resources Control Board is now a player in water allocations where they haven't been historically. They went from no regulation to the mandatory that we all had to adopt in 15 days. So they are not opposed to establishing and writing rules and enforcing them right then and there. As compared to the health department and everybody else, they take a long time. They've shown as an enforcement agency they will do it. I'm going to guess that there's a lot of pressure coming down the road from them towards everybody right now. So this is just an update to the board. Like I said, you'll hear a lot more from Director Evans once she gets a briefing from the Water Authority. But I think it's going to start to heat up here in December, January.
Are we keeping our developers that are now actually building very much aware of what's
Oh yeah,
going on?
we've got a list of every house, every meter, the developers. What I directed staff today to do is make sure we have a person, we have a phone number, and we have a way to call them to make sure not only the developers, but the people walking into the counter and just asking, hey, I'm going to be building a house. We're building a very big list to keep track of them, because I'm afraid if it happens, if you hear the developers now, they're saying, hey, it's taking us 30, 60, 90 days to get funding. So we're going to let them know as quickly as we can. And we've got the letter at the front counter that we give to every developer. Here's where we are, here's the impact, here's the risk. So they've got it right now.
I think I heard you say, Dennis, that not only do they have to have the meter paid for, but also a billing permit?
Yep,
So it has to be both?
both, you don't get one or the other. That's
So
what,
if you have a development and you
that's the
somehow
risk, that's the
coughed up
diff,
money for the meters and the capacity fees and all that, but you're still in the process of getting your permit.
You're out of
If
luck.
this stage 3 happens,
no meter.
no meter. Refund the money?
It's up to the board. And that's where I put in that memo that I've got the front counter that we give to everybody that walks in. Here's the 3 policies that impact you as a builder. Here's our drought management plan, here's our fee deferral plan, and here's the development agreement. Because all 3 tie one to the other. And if we hit stage 3, it's very clear, building permit and fees paid, including the water authority. You gotta have all 3. If you just have one of the 3 or 2 of the 3, you're out of luck.
You had mentioned when you first started with this, that you were gonna get more aggressive with the outreach and the awareness piece of this. What are you thinking?
What I've asked them is everything from, I'd like to send flyers to the schools, when kids take it home with the parents. I said even go down to Edwards Cinema, I mean, see if they'll let us put a banner in the middle of the theater. You know, just something that says, hey, we're in stage 2. Whatever we're doing right now, which is getting a lot out there, double it.
Are we working with our new outreach firm to make this a kind of a top priority, at least with their initial efforts?
We just signed the contract today. I also gave Lisa direction today to actually bring somebody else in independent of them, because they won't be up to speed on that probably for another month to a month and a half, as far as moving into that. So I told her to go ahead and be perfectly honest. The other group that interviewed, who said that we can do this for you, do this for you, and do this for you, I'm bringing them in to do this for us right now.
Good.
Yeah, so we're gonna reach out to somebody else to help us do it. Because as you may recall, Lisa is now in a different position, and we're still trying to fill the other role. So we haven't had success in backfilling that role yet.
What position is Lisa?
She actually, we opened and did the other position, which was the, not webmaster, but to do all of that, to handle all of that PR and all that kind of outreach. She made a choice to step down as a supervisor and go to that role. So we actually have the supervisor position over.
I didn't know that. Interesting.
Family, work choice, work best work.
Yeah.
Yeah. We thought we had a candidate, we're bringing a candidate back in for a second interview Thursday. So first one didn't work out, but we have a second candidate.
That's too bad. We didn't have to approve her switching.
No. We had a lot of threats against her.
Yeah, I enjoyed going out and things.
Yeah,
So.
she will still be doing all of that. That's where her expertise is, the marketing and the outreach and all that stuff. She's just not gonna be doing it as a supervisor.
Okay.
So, again, this is just FYI to the board. I think it's gonna really start to heat up. I just want the district to be well ahead of it. And I don't want the board suddenly having to adopt this, and you're hearing, we didn't know, nobody told us.
Yeah.
So we're gonna, if anything, we're gonna saturate them.
Do we have a section on our website for developers or those who might be interested in developing in our sphere of influence that would outline some of these?
No.
Do you think that would be at all beneficial?
Probably wouldn't hurt. You can look at it. Like I said, things are changing. They are really changing in general, and from what we've historically even done or looked at. And I'll look at that. That's all I have.
Director Hernandez brought something up that I had heard about, but hasn't come up to just now. My understanding was from years ago that the water district or the current board didn't ever authorize refunds. It just stayed, what they paid would stay
Yeah.
with the property.
Stays with the property.
But they never gave it back as a refund,
No.
even though they weren't building.
The only time we've ever done that in the district, board does it administratively or has allowed staff to do it, is, let's say, Director Hernandez thought he was gonna build 63 lots. So he came in and paid 63 lots, but for some process going through the map, he lost 2 lots and he could only build 59. They've just administratively given those back, said, okay, it wasn't your fault, you couldn't do it. But if you just bought and you put it on your property and you just chose not to build a house and leave it there, it stays on the property, non-transferable, non-refundable.
And the problem is you've got to build the facilities to serve it. You know, we're not like a bank where you can just come in and out whenever you feel like it. We've got to plan for the future. So that money is put into the aside to make sure that we've got the facilities necessary to provide the service.
Right now it'd be paying back
And
that
what
deficit.
happens sometimes is a developer will go into bankruptcy. And it may take years before that property ultimately is developed. but it does have the ability, at least we have the ability to serve it, because it's not something that we can necessarily, trunk lines and infrastructure sometimes is not something that we can easily do overnight. We've got to plan for the future. So that's why you basically don't have a policy of where you return the money if they don't develop.
You're talking to developer, you're talking to someone building a single-family houses.
That's a different deal.
Yeah.
That's different.
There's been a little flexibility when it's obviously something just happened, and the board just done it administratively. So that's all I have. That's just for, to kind of prime you for what's probably coming in the next couple of months.
Okay.
And I'll confine my report to closed session.
Okay, 3.2 then. Santa County Water Authority.
Well, Dennis is right, the meeting's tomorrow, but on the agenda, and I looked at a little bit of a pre-brief this morning, they did say that Met is getting a lot of pressure now from its own members and concern with the drought. And so they do think, like he said, that this will probably be showing up in January and may go into effect in April, but you realize that's very fast, much less if it's July. So it would be smart to do that, and they were encouraging everyone to push the conservation as well. They've got a new program out. It's for winter, and it's the summer's over, the drought isn't. So they have stuff coming out on that. There's another increase coming, additional funding going in for turf replacement, and we're working that, and another deal with SDG&E.
Washing machines.
For SDG&E for high efficiency washers, and that's tying in with, there's a lot of rumbling going on right now with the embedded energy in water, which is being used, and I'm not going to say rightly or wrongly, but it's being used by the environmentalists that we should seek water sources that have the least energy embedded in them before we go to the others, which isn't necessarily the way you do water resource supplies. So that's very interesting on that part. And then I was going to say I just lost the pages. It only had 450 pages on the agenda.
Oh,
I'm skipping
good.
through it really fast here. There was a report on the coming El Nino, which is only at 63%, but according to the maps they've done, this will be a fairly wet for the southern part of California. We may get our water, but there will be practically nothing in the north. And it's really important that the state understands, and we in particular, that people understand if we're getting the rain, it doesn't stop the drought. And that the south, they're just, it doesn't look like we're going to get snow at all. So it's not real good.
Are they doing any kind of awareness or outreach? One of the things that one of the benefits of campaigning for it to be up here is that you meet with a lot of people, and I was surprised to find out how many people thought that Prop 1 was going to solve all of our problems and solve it immediately. Are they doing any outreach that, like you mentioned, summer's over, but the drought isn't? Well, I think there's a lot of folks out there that think, well, we just bought a bunch of new water, and that's not the case.
No, that's not the case. I think the confusion comes from a lot of people were concerned that, well, I don't want to vote for the proposition because the money's all going to end up in the north and it's all about the Bay Delta. So they worked very hard to spread the money out. And we have a great deal of money here, but it doesn't, even if it's to rebuild 100 reservoirs and we do a desal, it doesn't bring us water. The water is a gift from the universe. And so other than if San Diego does its pure water and does direct, potable.
DPR, direct potable use.
DPR, well, okay, they're using the water they have over and over and over. But even that, it's 10 years or more down the road. So it is kind of confusing that people don't understand it. I will say this, originally when we went in the polls at the last meeting, they had said that the Proposition 1 was only getting 48% support in San Diego. Well, if you saw the results, we actually were one of the highest, 68% supported it. So somebody did some wonderful promotion for that, and I'm really grateful we've got the funds and the grants coming, but it's not a quick fix for us.
I know that,
And
I just don't
I'm
know
not,
if a lot
when
of
you
people
say, are
know
we
that.
doing it, right now, they're going, I don't think they're spending time to tell people that the proposition isn't gonna do it. I think what they're trying to do is promote, it's a drought, stop using the water, use it over and over. That's really where the focus is. So it's a good point, and I can toss it out to Jason and them. But I don't-
Maybe just ask, is anybody else seeing this? Because it sure seemed to me when I was walking door to door that everybody thought, oh yeah, this is gonna take care of it, problem's gone. And, you know, I mean, I can't tell you how many people were watching their cars, because you walk on the weekends, right? And
Did you not give them tickets?
asking for votes, you don't give tickets. But you do have a conversation with them, and they're like, yeah, I know about the drought, and they're holding their hose. and- So,
I do.
I just want you to know, the sales job I thought was very good. And I thought Jerry Brown did a wonderful job of assuring us that if the bond passed, we're gonna have plenty of water. And by the way, all the firefighters you will ever need will be at your door should a fire happen. So I think that was the sales job, the snow job, because people don't realize it's 10 years away at best.
they don't.
They may not know it's 10 years away, but it was an important snow job to get the money. You know, we never know what we're voting on, do we? Even when we pick our candidates. Sorry, Mike. But-
You've been a candidate too.
Yes, I've been there too, so I'm just
That is
saying.
from the water authority?
System. Anyway, thank you.
Encino Wastewater Authority Capital Improvements Committee.
Yes, we had our meeting, and we approved the expansion projects up to date. And then we also talked about our strategic business plan, again, which was brought up at the board, which is brand new and full of individual tasks, which we believe will get us to 2020 and in good stead.
Policy and Finance Committee.
Well, actually, it's more, because I already reported on that the last time, but we had a board meeting today, regular board meeting with Encina, and they did it early this month. Is that right? Yeah, early this month, and a week early, and we ratified at the board level the proposed business plan. And that's about it. Our next meeting for Policy and Finance, December 2nd, and CIC is December 10th.
And has there been any changes? Encina's still gonna keep that prime piece of real estate open and ready for taxpayer use when necessary? Or they're gonna have some developer try to develop it?
I think, well, we had a closed session on that today, but I think
Oh.
that's all slowing down.
Yeah.
Good.
Mainly because of some new things that have come up, which we're talking about now, which is direct portable reuse or anything of that nature. Maybe using some of that property for that, and then maybe tying in the T-cell plant, you know, yeah,
Makes sense.
a lot of stuff.
That's the repairs money well spent on
Right.
that piece of property years ago. Director's reports on travel, conferences, seminars? Hearing none so far, I have one quick one. I was
Well-
at,
Well, the Water Council
You go ahead.
yesterday with the Emergency Operations Center, they have one in the county, and if it gets big, they send it to the state, and if it gets bigger, it goes to the feds, and they got all the bells and whistles they have.
And just to see, you can help me remember this, because the EOC only opens up for 5 reasons, 5 things they cover.
That's right.
Like a
Let's
quiz.
see if we remember all 5 of them. Anyone? Fires?
Fire,
Right? Flood,
earthquake,
Earthquake?
terrorism,
terrorism, and pandemic.
pandemic.
That's 4,
I was gonna say.
missing one.
Let me
Well,
get all
I said
5.
flood.
Fire,
Oh, you
earthquake,
said flood.
Yeah.
Anything to do with
Flood,
water.
yeah.
Yeah, pandemic. No one
Pandemic
really
was the
had
one.
that. That was one, and terrorism we think about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But a pandemic, as we're facing now with Ebola. So I'm reporting on the same one, I just came up with 5.
Good for you.
With a lot of help from my friends, because I didn't remember them. Other business? Director's comments? Mr. Hernandez?
It comes out.
Dennis, do we have a grant writer in our organization here?
No, sir.
And so then, much like the North County group, we rely on some other agency or some other group to handle that for us? Because where I'm going with all this is, it struck me that the Padre Dam presentation was part of a grant, $1 million grant. And I didn't know, they didn't say who wrote the grant, but I went, well, gee, do we have somebody looking out for grants?
RMC is the firm that's writing the grants for us through the cooperation,
Through the North County?
through the North County group, yeah.
And do we have any presently being written?
No.
Are they out there looking?
We have our request in for all the different projects that we would like in their next round of grant funding. Yes, we've already made that and turned it in, but that's all for the various reclaim thingies in North County. Beyond that, we have no other projects pending for grants.
And do we have a list of the ones that Vallecitos is going to benefit from?
I'd have to get it from James, but yes, we added some projects in there to do it. I think the next one that we have in there is in the next round of funding coming is we are looking at whether or not we can expand Metalwork to generate more reclaimed water through the existing treatment plant by raising the chlorine contact tanks. Because we have enough capacity process-wise to float it. We don't have the sewage. That's the big problem right now is we don't have sewage. But that is the next phase that we've put in there was to look at re-rating and expanding Metalwork. Yeah.
I have but one comment, and I'd just like to say this is the end, well, on the 8th, I guess, it's the end of my reign of terror as the president. And I want to thank staff, and I want to especially thank the board of directors for putting up with me. And I appreciate all the education that I've gotten from staff and the other board members. And I'm looking forward to next year. And with that, I would say we close this meeting and move into a closed session meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, and we'll take a 10-minute break.
Okay.
Neil, did you have some graphics?
Motion, I'm sorry, I need a motion and a second to move to close?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.